Sinister Sips Investigates. I'm Americus.
And I'm Shelby. Grab your coffee, tea, or whatever you're sipping today, because this episode is one that's been requested over and over.
It keeps turning off. It just cuts off.
What to share this
Today's case has probably been one of the most debated true crime cases over the last few years.
one? Definitely. I've seen people argue about it everywhere. TikTok, Reddit, Facebook, and YouTube. Honestly, anywhere people talk about true crime, half the comments say she absolutely meant to do it. The others have say prosecutors turned a terrible crash into a murder case.
And that's exactly why we wanted to cover it.
Right, because instead of just taking a 60-second TikTok or a Facebook post at face value, we're going to go through the actual timeline, what investigators found, what was argued in court, and what defense argued, and where the facts and speculation begins.
This case is emotional, controversial, and heartbreaking for multiple families.
And no matter where you stand, after hearing everything, two young men lost their lives. That's something that should never get lost in the debate.
So let's start with Mackenzie herself. Who was she before all of this happened?
Mackenzie Shirilla grew up in Strongsville, Ohio. If you've never heard of Strongsville, it's a suburb outside Cleveland. Cleveland is the kind of town where people know each other, families stay for years, and generally considered a safe community. She was born in 2004, meaning she was only 17 years old when the crash happened. And honestly, if you looked at her social media before July 20 of 22, nothing immediately jumps out. She looked like every other teenager. Pictures with friends, TikTok, Snapchat stories, videos singing in the car, photos at football games. Nothing that would make someone think this person would eventually be convicted of murder.
Which is honestly what makes this case so shocking, because when people hear double murder, they usually picture someone with this long criminal history, not a teenager.
Exactly. She didn't have this extensive, violent background. She wasn't someone who had been in trouble over and over. That's one reason the case got so much attention. People kept asking, how does someone go from being a normal teenager to being sentenced to prison for life?
Now let's talk about Dominic, because unfortunately, sometimes victims get forgotten when cases become this controversial.
Dominic Russo was 20 years old. Family members described him as funny, outgoing, protective, and someone who loved spending time with friends. He was close with his family, and by all accounts, people genuinely enjoyed being around him. He and Mackenzie had been in a on again, off again relationship. Now, if you've ever been in high school or honestly just been young, you know relationships can get messy. Arguments, breakups, getting back together, blocking each other, unblocking each other, making up, breaking up. It happens.
Especially when emotions are running high, and this is like the time when everyone's emotions are high as fuck because of puberty.
Exactly. And from testimony later, presented during the trial, prosecutors argued that their relationship had become increasingly emotional in the weeks leading up to the crash. The defense, however, argued those issues reflected the normal ups and downs of a teenage relationship and didn't establish a motive for murder. That's an important distinction because relationship conflict alone doesn't prove criminal intent.
Then we have the third person in the car, Davion Flanagan.
Davion was only 19 years old. Anyways, unlike Dominic, Davion wasn't involved in Mackenzie romantically. He was Dominic's close friend. Everything that's been shared publicly paints the picture of someone who simply got into a car with people he trusted. He had no reason to believe he wouldn't make it home. His family later described him as respectful, hardworking, and someone who had his whole future ahead of him. Honestly, whenever I read about this case, I always think about Davion because so much attention gets placed on Mackenzie and Dominic's relationship that people sometimes forget there was another young man whose life was taken.
That's something I've noticed a lot too, especially recently looking back at the case. A lot of documentaries barely mention him, and his family actually has a scholarship for people who want to go to barber school because that's what he wanted to do after he lost it out in football due to an ACL injury.
Exactly. And he deserves to be remembered just as much.
So, what do we know about Mackenzie and Dominic's relationship leading up to July 2022?
Court testimony that relationship indicated the relationship had become strained. There had been reportedly there had reportedly been arguments, periods where they weren't together, emotional conversations. Prosecutors argued Mackenzie become increasingly upset over their relationship. The defense disagreed with that interpretation, whatever, and argued that the evidence reflected the emotional up and downs common in many teenage relationships. It's also important to remember that not every claim circulating online was evidence in court. Throughout this case, social media amplified rumors and unverified screenshots that weren't necessarily part of the leg.
That's one thing people really have to keep in mind with modern cases. Sometimes the internet creates its own version of events.
Yeah, exactly. And our goal today is to focus on what investigators documented, what was argued in court, and where those arguments differed, while making it clear when something comes from online discussion rather than established evidence. As July came to an end, no one could have predicted that within days, three young people would be in a car together during the early morning hours, and only one of them would survive.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, especially when you're first learning about it and you don't like I would have liked if I could have remembered better what happened when the news article started spreading,
Yeah.
but I just don't. Like I don't remember really seeing it.
Yeah, which nobody really saw it until it become like the whole controversial thing.
Yeah. So now we're at the morning everything changed.
This is the part of the case that's probably talked about the most. It's also the part where emotions run the highest because no matter what anyone believes about Mackenzie's intent, the outcome was devastating. Two young men lost their lives, one young woman survived with serious injuries, and multiple families were changed forever. So let's walk through what investigators say happened.
Do investigators honestly know exactly what everyone was doing before the crash?
Not every moment, but investigators were able to piece together much of the timeline using footage, witness statements, and digital evidence. At some point during the night, Mackenzie, Dominic, and Davion were together. As morning approached, Mackenzie was behind the wheel of her Toyota Camry, Dominic was in the front passenger seat, and Davion was seated in the back. There wasn't any indication that the people around them expected something catastrophic to happen just minutes later.
Okay, so what exactly happened on Alameda Drive?
According to the crash reconstruction experts, the car accelerated rapidly as it traveled down
Alameda.
Alameda Drive. Investigators later estimated the vehicle was traveling at roughly 100 miles per hour, with some expert testimony placing it at approximately 104 miles per hour just before impact. To put that into perspective, the speed limit on that road was far lower. Traveling at over 100 miles per hour dramatically reduces the amount of time a driver has to react and greatly increases the force of the collision.
I mean, I want to say that's incredibly fast because for a normal car it is, but as someone who's went to NHRA events and seen funny cars, that's kind of nothing.
Yeah.
Like when you look at it from that perspective, it's nothing, but just a normal person driving their car down the road, that's felony. That's how they drive in Texas normally.
It is, and one of the biggest pieces of evidence presented by prosecutors wasn't just the speed, it was what investigators said didn't happen. According to the testimony, there were no skid marks indicating hard braking before the crash. Investigators also testified that the vehicle's path remained largely straight as it approached the building. The prosecution argued those facts supported their claim that Mackenzie intentionally drove into the building. The defense challenged the
Interpretation.
yeah, that word, arguing that the physical evidence alone could not establish what Mackenzie was thinking in those final moments.
If y'all can't tell by my facial expressions, I truly don't know much about this case. Shelby is like the Mackenzie Shirilla super fan almost when it comes to this case. Not the girl herself, just the case.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened when the car hit? Because I know it like hit a sign and then it kind of like, hold on, we'll use the dead mic. It hit into the sign and then it kind of like ricocheted into the building. So everything took on the passenger side.
Yeah. The impact was catastrophic. According to investigators, the force of the collision was so severe that major components of the vehicle were torn apart. The crash caused extensive damage to both the car and the building. Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan suffered fatal injuries. Mackenzie survived, but she sustained significant injuries that required medical treatment. Out of the three people in the car, she was the only survivor.
Okay, so she was flight lifted.
Yes.
Okay, so they brought in the helicopter and they took her. But wasn't one of the boys still somewhat alive when they arrived? Like, was doing their final
Davion.
moments? Davion was still kind of
Because
alive.
he was still breathing.
Okay, and then he died. Technically, Dio, it wasn't like dead on arrival, but he died before they could get him out of the car.
Which there's been several who like several parts where people thinks that he might have just been, taking his final breaths. Like he
Okay.
might have died before the cops arrived. He was just taking like that minimum breaths that
Okay.
your body still has in you after you die.
Okay, and that's truly heartbreaking, especially with Davion and all that. So I'll let you continue your story.
It really is. Behind every legal argument and every headline are two families who lost sons and friends that morning.
And I remember seeing about when they did like a prayer vigil or something along those lines for the boys.
Yeah.
People stayed out there all night long. Like there's people who stood there for like 14 plus hours. They didn't let the candles go out all night. They stood there and waited for
Yeah.
morning. So at first, was this investigated like any other fatal crash, like vehicular manslaughter?
Yes, initially authorities approached it as a fatal traffic collision, but as detectives gathered more information, their focus shifted. They reviewed surveillance footage, examined the vehicle, consulted crash reconstruction experts, and interviewed witnesses. Eventually, prosecutors concluded they believed that the evidence pointed to an initial intentional act rather than a tragic accident. That decision fundamentally changed the direction of the case.
So with all of these, everyone mentions the surveillance footage. So what makes that so important for this case?
Because it captured the vehicle in the moments before the impact. According to the testimony, the footage showed the car traveling at a very high speed towards the building. The prosecution argued the footage, combined with the crash reconstruction, supported the theory that the vehicle was intentionally driven into the structure. The defense argued that while the footage documented what happened, it did not reveal Mackenzie's state of mind or prove intent.
Okay, I've seen that a lot where like, oh, that doesn't show what she was thinking. You're driving a 2018 Toyota Camry at 100 to 104 miles per hour. You are not Dale Sr., bitch.
Yeah.
You cannot react that fast. So, one thing I remember seeing all over TikTok, and this has been recently because this is like my feed now all of a sudden, was people sharing screenshots of Mackenzie's social media. Were those like major parts of the trial?
This is where It's really important to separate online discussion from what was actually presented in court. After the crash, countless screenshots, captions, and alleged posts spread across social media. Some people claim they proved motive, others questioned whether the screenshots were authentic or taken out of context. While aspects of Mackenzie's relationship and communications were discussed during the legal proceedings, not every viral post circulating online was admitted to as evidence. The prosecution relied heavily on the crash reconstruction, witness testimony, and other evidence. Social media became a major part of the public conversation, but much of what people shared online went beyond what the court actually considered.
Okay, so this is basically if this was done today, they'd be like, "Oh, that's an AI post."
Yeah.
But literally, she was taking on a modeling deal while in the hospital having her mama speak for her. So if someone watched only TikTok videos about the case, they might walk away with a very different understanding than someone who would follow the trial.
Yeah.
So they would either see the innocent girl, they would most likely see the guilty girl, but someone could get on the wrong side and see the innocent.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to check whether a claim comes from verified court testimony or from online speculation.
So after all the evidence was reviewed, and they're going through their final thing with all of this, what happened next?
Prosecutors ultimately charged Mackenzie Shirilla with multiple offenses, including 2 counts of murder related to the deaths of Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan. That decision surprised many people because fatal crashes are more commonly prosecuted under offenses like aggravated vehicular homicide. The prosecution argued that the evidence in this case justified murder charges because they believed Mackenzie intentionally caused the crash. The defense strongly disputed that conclusion.
Okay, and they mainly think this because of how many times they saw her go to the crash site before, right? It was like 6 times she
Yeah.
visited. And because there is on the surveillance footage what people think is her friend Rosie's car. And I'm sorry, all I can think of is Caillou. I don't want to play with Rosie. I don't like Rosie. Because that's what I think when I see that bitch. I don't like Rosie.
Like, I don't understand why you don't like Rosie. Rosie.
But so this all, it just keeps bringing up more questions at the center of everything.
Yes, exactly. Not whether the crash happened, not whether it was tragic, those facts weren't in dispute. The central legal question became whether prosecutors had not proven, beyond a reasonable doubt that Mackenzie intentionally drove into the building. That question would eventually be answered during a bench trial where a judge rather than a jury would decide Mackenzie's fate. We'll break down the testimony, the arguments from both sides, why the judge found Mackenzie guilty, the sentence she received, and why people are still debating on this case years later.
Okay, so why didn't she have a jury on her trial? Like, wouldn't that have helped her? Well, I don't understand why Ohio lets you choose and why she chose not to have a
It was
jury.
also in Superior Court.
Oh, so she knew people already knew and had their opinions.
Yes.
So it would have been very hard to find an unopinionated person.
Yes.
Okay.
Whenever it went to court, whenever it got switched out of juvenile court to
Big girl court.
big girl court, big criminal court. Don't commit crimes, kids. Anyways,
Have a lot of experience with that, do you, Mad Eye?
but whenever it got switched, according to the documents and what it says on the documents, it was indeed a superior court trial.
Okay. So prosecutors had charged Mackenzie with murder, not vehicular manslaughter, which is what most of these cases would have been. That decision shocked a lot of people because fatal crashes, they're not prosecuted as murder charges. It's manslaughter, it's the aggravated
Um,
vehicular assault sort of deal.
Second degree murder without regard, just there's a bunch. Exactly. Normally, cases involving deadly crashes are charged as aggravated vehicular homicide or similar offenses. Murder charges require prosecutors to convince the court that the deaths were intentional, and intent is one of the hardest things to prove because you can't look inside someone's mind. So everything came down to one question: did Mackenzie intentionally drive into that building, or was this an unimaginable, reckless crash?
Okay, and literally the next thing I'm supposed to say is what I've already said is why there wasn't a jury. Because that's in my questions. I started looking at this, like, why would she choose that option?
Yeah. That's because Mackenzie waived her right to a jury trial. Instead, the case was heard as a bench trial, meaning Judge Nancy Russo was responsible for hearing the evidence, deciding what was creditable, and ultimately determining whether the prosecution had proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. Some people online thought that was unusual, but defendants have the legal right to choose a bench trial in many criminal cases.
So she was like Judge Judy up in that bitch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Props to her. That's the only thing I have to say is props to her.
So what was the prosecution's main argument?
The prosecution argued that the physical evidence pointed to intent. They emphasized several key points. First, the speed. 104 down, a 30 to 45 mile per hour road is ridiculous.
Yes.
Investigators testified that the car reached approximately 100 miles per hour before impact. Don't speed. Me
You
and her,
get a ticket.
we both learned our lesson. Don't do it.
My court date's not until November.
It's on my birthday. Anyways, second, they argued there was no evidence of braking or swerving to avoid the crash.
How'd you put bracking?
Braking? That's braking.
That says bracking. Braking has an E in it.
Bracken. Yeah, bracket. Anyways, third, they presented expert crash reconstruction testimony explaining why they believe the vehicle's movement was consistent with someone maintaining acceleration into the building. To make the car go vroom vroom, you have to press the vroom vroom button down.
I feel like if she had truly had a POTS episode and she had passed out, there would have been the black box would have showed continued acceleration. She would have maxed the car out on speed.
Which, no offense, but race cars sometimes are Camrys.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is that, like, if she had truly fainted or passed out from a health condition, it would have happened a lot faster. The car would have been hitting 160, 180 when it hit.
Exactly. Intent of off. Oh shit, I didn't finish. Finally, they argued that Mackenzie's relationship with Dominic provided a possible motive, pointing to testimony about conflict between the two leading up to the crash. Taken together, prosecutors said those facts showed this was not simply reckless driving, but an intentional act. False. The reason they say reckless driving is because I can upload a few videos, documents, the link, whatever. There is a whole folder of her recklessly driving.
Yeah, and like there was even one point where she tried to be like texting Dominic's mom is like, he grabbed the wheel from me and tried to spin my car out. And that's the only thing her mom and dad have to say to make her innocent. Then you mess up as a hold on, I gotta get her mom in here. And you mess up as a parent. Because her mom got some weird ass nose job.
Where parents mess up. No parent's perfect.
So none of those pieces alone necessarily prove intent, but prosecutors argued that they did.
Yes. Intent is often proven through circumstantial evidence rather than a direct confession. The prosecution's position was that all of the circumstances viewed together supported the conclusion that Mackenzie intentionally caused the crash.
Okay, so we know the prosecutor side, and they have a very strong argument. I mean, I will say that's a pretty good attorney for the state. So, what did Mackenzie's attorney rebuttal? Because they don't really argue; they're doing the rebuttal end of this.
Yeah. The defense maintained that the prosecution had not proven intent beyond a reasonable doubt. They argued that while Mackenzie had been driving recklessly, there was no direct evidence showing she intended to kill anyone. The defense also challenged aspects of the crash reconstruction and argued that the physical evidence could not conclusively establish what Mackenzie was thinking in those final moments. In short, the defense asked the judge to view the crash as a tragic accident caused by extreme recklessness rather than murder.
So they still keep going back to the you can't read her mind.
Yeah,
Bitch, what the fuck? Why is that your only true argument? Is that you can't read her mind?
exactly.
So then we come up to the verdict.
On August 14th, 2023, Judge Nancy Russo found Mackenzie Shirilla guilty on multiple counts, including 2 counts of murder. And in explaining her decision, the judge says she believed Mackenzie had driven the car like a missile directly directly into the building. That phrase quickly spread through news coverage and become one of the most memorable descriptions associated with the case. The judge concluded that the prosecution had proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt.
That's crazy that she literally said like a missile. That was like,
Yeah.
hold on, wait, it's even the right color. And I'm sorry. I don't mean any ill will against Dominic, but I feel like Mackenzie was only with him because of his money. Because one of the things she talks about is like how she loved her Chanel earrings, how she loved this, how she loved that, and it's all tangible. It's not his love, it's not his compassion for her, it's the tangibles.
Yeah. Oh,
Sandwich man, we didn't ask if you were broke or not. We know Shelby loves you for you.
Sometimes it's questionable. Anyways, it was a national news, and almost immediately people began debating whether the was the right one.
Okay. Sandwich man, if you want to come on, I'll hand you the mic.
Fair enough.
If you didn't hear him, he said she's fucking psycho. So, what? You got a point there. So, what sentence did she finally receive? Because I know when it was in juvenile, it was going to be like 3 years in parole.
She was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. That means she must serve the minimum term before becoming eligible for parole. Parole eligibility does not guarantee release. Props. It means a parole board may consider the case after the required minimum has been served. Her attorneys have continued to challenge the conviction through the appeals process.
Which they missed by a day because it was leap year. Because they're stupid. But this also means that the case isn't fully over. That when she's like, what did it say, 35 is when she'll get out?
It's 2037 before she's able for parole.
And she was born in 2004?
In 22, she was 17.
Hang on. 2022. Okay, so she's born in 2005. Hold on. So she was 17 plus 15 years. But she was 18 when she got sentenced, wasn't she? Yeah, she was 18. Because that's the only reason they really did push it to the the big girl court.
Because of how close
So
she was to 18.
she's gonna be 33 before she's even eligible for parole.
Don't murder people. That's right. Appeals focus on whether legal errors occurred during the trial, not on retrying the facts from scratch. Mackenzie's legal team has argued that the evidence is significant. Say the big word.
Which big word? I wasn't paying attention.
Big word.
Insufficient.
Yeah, that word. To support the murder convictions and has challenged aspects of trial proceedings. As of the time we're recording this episode, the conviction remains in place.
This has got to be one of the most divided true crime cases I've seen, and y'all know how much I love the Murdoch murders. Y'all know I'm obsessed with that shit. I'm debating taking the day of his retrial off work so I can sit at home and watch it. So, I mean, this case really has covered a whole lot. And I'm glad that Shelby was here to do this. Hold on, wait. I get the mics now. Hold on. I'm back, bitches. So, y'all are going to be seeing a lot more of Shelby. Probably on the Instagram and the TikTok, because she's like the manager of the podcast now. And she's going to be doing all some cool editing shit. So, she's going to put in this video the 911 call. She's going to put in different pictures of the car and things like that. And we do not mean to be disrespectful to Dominic or Davion's family by posting the car. We just want to keep the information out there and alive so no one can be like, well, what about the car? What happened to that? No. We want the truth to be out there because we support their families in their grief. More than Mackenzie's mother and father worrying about what's happened to their daughter who lived. I think she's coming back now. Y'all are going to lose me. Yep, she's back. Okay. Ow. I hurt myself.
So where was you at?
You're on your last thingy because I was just talking to the people about you.
Okay. Anyways, I agree. You'll find people who believe the evidence clearly established intent, and you'll find others who believe the prosecution proved reckless driving but not murder. What's important is recognizing that thoughtful people can disagree about how the evidence should be interpreted, even while acknowledging the devastating loss suffered by the victims' families.
So, after researching everything and you being so invested in this, what is your biggest takeaway?
For me, is how easy it is for social media to shape people's opinions before they ever read court documents. I have read all of them and all 33,000 pictures and text messages. Anyways, and watch trial testimony. Watched all of those. There were so many viral videos claiming certain screenshots and or posts proved everything, but not all of those claims were verified or central to the case. This is a reminder that it's important to separate internet narratives from what was actually argued and evaluated in court.
So, regardless of where someone lands on the verdict, it's clear that this case raises difficult questions about intent, evidence, and how courts evaluate circumstantial proof, like screenshots and TikTok videos and Snapchat stories. It's really kind of opened the eye to people on how modern cases are going to be evaluated from here on out.
And above all, it's important to remember Dominic Russo and Devion Flanagan, two young men, lost their lives. Their families continue to live with that loss every day.
So, Sinister Sippers, we would like to know. Why are we holding on? We would like to know what your thoughts are on this case in the comments. Let us know what you think, what you've seen, anything like that. Do you think that the prosecution proved intent beyond a reasonable doubt? Or do you believe that. Are you on Mackenzie's side or Dominic and Davion's side, basically?
We'd love to hear your perspective. Just remember to keep the conversation respectful. Cases like this involve real families and real lives. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow Sinister Sips Investigates wherever you listen to podcasts or watch on YouTube.
And by that, she means Spotify, if I'd ever remember to upload the episodes to Spotify. I've not uploaded one since Gacy. Oopsie, Spotify listeners. So thank you for joining us. And until next time, stay curious, stay respectful, and we'll see you in the next investigation. Bye.
Southwest Dispatch.
Yes. Are you familiar where Progress coincides with Albion Road there in Strongsville?
Yep.
Yeah, just across the street from Progress, the building, there's a car that's smashed up against the building. I didn't go up to it because I was on my motorcycle. I didn't know if I'd get stuck, but they ran the curb. I can see they smashed